Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be doing a project using an old book. It's a project for anybody, adults, kids. It's not a complicated thing, it's something anybody can do. It's just, if you have kids doing it, just remind them that we don't normally rip up books and glue the pages to things. And what better project for March? March is reading month, so a book-related project for the kids would be great. What you'll need is some fairly good quality paper. It doesn't have to be top-notch, doesn't have to be watercolor paper, but if you've got some old books that have a little bit thicker paper, like it's not super thin, like, the pocket romances sometimes have really thin vellum-like paper. You don't want that. You want something that's thick enough to paint on without it just coming to pieces. You also don't want paper that has a waxy, glossy coating, like magazine paper, textbook paper. That will not work very well for this, so don't use that. Just usually any old hardcover book, most of the old books will have good enough quality paper for this. You will need glue. I just use Elmer's glue. This is the clear Elmer's glue, but the white glue will work just fine too. You will need an old brush. Disposable brush is great. I've got a 1.5-inch chip brush here that I used. You can wash the glue out of it, but I would recommend just using one you can throw away at the end. You'll need a canvas or something to glue the paper to. I just got a 16 by 20 inch stretched canvas here. Watercolors. I used the liquid watercolors for this, but any kind of watercolors will work. You only need 2 brushes today, a fine detail brush and then a round watercolor camel hair brush. And optional, a toothbrush you can use because we splatter some color around on the canvas, but you can use a regular brush for that too. You don't have to have the toothbrush. Another thing you need, well, you don't need, it's optional. If you want to make your paper look aged and yellowed, if it isn't already, if it's a book that's not already aged and yellowed, some cold coffee. Just, coffee from the pot from this morning, or if you're a mom like me, there's cold coffee sitting somewhere around the house. So we just use that and rub it on the paper and let it dry, and it's great for making it look aged and yellowed. I think that's all we need today. So let's get started. I'll show you how to get your papers glued onto your canvas. I hope you enjoy the project today. So I've got my canvas here. I've got a 16 by 20 inch. And I've got some ripped out sheets of paper from my book. Now, if you don't want, see, I've got jagged edges here, I just ripped it out. If you don't want the jagged edges, if you want nice clean lines, you can use scissors to cut it out, but I just like the look of the ripped edges. All I'm going to do is, got my glue here. You can use the white Elmer's glue. You could really use whatever glue you want. I just like the Elmer's glue because it's not very expensive and the clear is really easy to use. So I'm going to do this up here where you can see me. As I'm just going to put some glue all on the back of this page here. Then I'm going to use the old brush and I'm going to spread it all the way out to the edges. You want to make sure it gets all the way to the edges of the paper, because if you've got parts that aren't covered in glue, and I'm just going to put it right here. If you've got parts that aren't covered in glue all the way, you'll end up with little tabs sticking up on your canvas, and we don't want that. We want to make sure it's all smooth, all glued to the canvas. You see, I can see it lifting right there. Didn't get glue right there. You want to make sure that you get glue all the way out to the edges of the paper. I'm just going to press that down. Now don't worry about lining it up with the edges. It looks better, to me anyway, if you kind of put them around haphazardly, and then after it's dried or as it's drying, you then cut away the excess. Because I prefer the disorderly look. Okay, so I'm just going to keep doing this. And if you don't want to do this right on top of your canvas, you can do this, the gluing off to the side. Once it gets more filled with the pages, we will want to move off of the canvas for doing this, because we don't want to cover the front side of the paper with glue, because we want the watercolors to work well on it. And if it's all covered in glue, it kind of seals it up. All right, I'm going to put this one over to the side like this. I'm just making sure to press it down all along the edges. See, I'm just going different, and I like to do pages from all throughout the book so that they're not all in the same order, you know, page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I like to have, you know, page 166, page 3, page 77, you know. Once you've got all of your pages glued to your canvas, you can take a pair of scissors and just start trimming along the edge of the canvas. Now you can wait for the paper to be dry to do this, or you can do it while it's still wet. I sometimes like to do it while it's still wet, just so I can kind of push down the edges of the paper onto the canvas. We've got our edges all cut off on our canvas. We're ready to let that dry. We're going to put the coffee on our canvas now, just to age it, yellow it, make it look like old paper. Now I've just got some cold coffee here from earlier, and I've got the brush that I used to brush glue on the paper. You can get a different brush. You can use your hands to just dip in the coffee and spatter it on. It really doesn't matter. But I washed this out and washed the glue out of it, so it's fine now. I'm just going to dip into the coffee and spatter it around. Now if you want to just brush it in, you can do that. But it does give it a unique look if you spatter it and just let some of those spattered areas sit, because those spots will be a little bit darker. It'll add a little bit of variation in the yellowing, and it'll just look really neat. I like the way it looks, but I do like to make sure we've got coffee pretty much all over. I'm not gonna lie, your canvas is gonna smell like coffee for a little bit, but that's all right. Who doesn't like the smell of coffee? Well, I'm sure some people don't, but I sure do. All right. Now, I can just take this and just add some spatters around. And you're going to want to make sure to leave this in an area where you can leave it to lay flat to dry. Because obviously if you pick it up and try and lay it upright to dry, it's going to leave, it's all going to run down and leave runs in it, and it's not going to leave cool spatters in it. You can let this dry and do this step as many times as you want until you get the desired yellowing. I have done this project a few times before, and on one of them I think I did the coffee step like 5 times. And what I was doing is I did the whole canvas the first time with the coffee, and then the second time, third time, fourth time, I just focused more on the center, and then I did my little painting in the center. So you can do this step as many times as you want, or you can just do it once and call it good. Whatever you think looks good to you. And you don't have to do this step either. This is an optional step. If you don't want your paper to look all yellowed, you don't have to do that. Before you go, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my new classes.